I wrote a piece called Israel Never Looked So Good, and there were 7,000 likes on Huffington Post, and 3,000 shares, and maybe 600 comments. And most of the readers were from the left. And a lot of them were shocked. What do you mean Israel never looked so good? This was after the demonstration in Egypt. So my role, the way David Suissa loves Israel, is I like to provide context. Context. You know, my boy, Noah, I've never talked politics with him. We always talk about the Lakers. Lakers are the parts of the week. Oh, now it's the worst. I've been a Laker fan for 25 years. It's never been this bad. I was really ashamed of what they did. Really, I mean, I was really, and I said that to my boy. It was a shameful act. My boy says, you know, everybody's talking about your articles at school. All my teachers talking about, you know, what's going on? Why are they talking about your articles? So I had to summarize 30 years of Middle East analysis for a short attention span junkie who texts everything, and then see if I can come up with something in 30 seconds. I was driving him to a basketball game, and I really thought long and hard. And I said to him, you know, Noah, Israel is far from being perfect. Israel is not a 10 out of 10, it's not a 9 out of 10, it's not 8 out of 10, it's probably a 7 out of 10. Maybe 6, some might say 8, 7 out of 10. But here's the catch. Most of the world is trying to make Israel a 1 out of 10, or even a 0 out of 10. Your father is fighting the injustice in that gap. This is what I'm fighting for. I have friends who are obsessed with going from 7 to 9. I respect them, but it's not my instrument. I think there is enough of a movement in Israel to turn Israel from a 7 to a 9. I go to Israel at least once a year. And one of the remarkable, extraordinary aspects about Israel is every time you see something that upsets you, you uncover it and you see a corrective mechanism. You see a force, a movement to try to make things better. Whether it's lawyers fighting for the rights of Arab who are discriminated against, whether it's a Sephardic rabbi who will take on the monopoly of Shas and their corruption and fight for Haredis to go to school and to go into the army, like Rabbi Amselem, who I wrote about. There's this enormous corrective mechanism. There's an unbelievable amount of dissension and argument and debate about making things better. So that's my reassurance, that Israel has enough forces in Israel trying to get from 7 to a 9. Here in America, I try to show the world, and I'm grateful that I'm in Huffington Post, because I'm not preaching to the choir. I know from the comments, there is such an intense bias against Israel in this world, it keeps me up at night. It really does. When I find out that a great Israeli hero cannot go to London because he's afraid to get arrested, or even Tzipi Livni, by the way, is afraid to go to London because she's afraid to get arrested. That's like the kind of outrage that just nourishes me and keeps me going. So I am protective of Israel, it's true. But I provide context. So that's my tough love, but it's really tough love. Now, there's also what I call love tough. Love tough is when you say, well, you know, Israel has a lot of problems, and Israel does a lot of good things, got a lot of Nobel Peace Prize winners, very successful, blah, but let me tell you how bad it is. We end with the tough part. That's love tough, that's not tough love. Always end with the love. Like I would love my boy. You know, Noah makes a lot of mistakes, but he's a good boy. He means well. If I ever thought that Israel would want to go into Gaza and purposefully murder civilians, I don't think I would be the supporter of Israel. But I've read the manuals. They can get in trouble for stealing a banana. When they take over a house, there has to be a cleaning crew that comes over. I've seen the level of attention that they give to acting morally in the IDF. They make mistakes, tremendous, but not as many mistakes as the American Army or as the European armies. If you look at the percentage of our collateral damage that's civilian versus other armies, bar 9 times out of 10, Israel gives me reason to be proud of it. The democracy is made to make mistakes. Now consider 23 countries where 22 are covered up, and one of them is completely uncovered. And the one that's uncovered somehow gets most of the criticism. Why? Because it's uncovered. The reason Israel ends up looking so bad is because it's got freedom of speech. And if there's one dream I have for the Middle East, is that the Middle East starts to have the freedom of speech that Israel has. If there's one value that's quintessentially Jewish, it's the freedom to speak. Natan Sharansky says the real proof of democracy, if you have to pick one, he said when you go out on the street, you say anything you want, and you have no fear of saying what you want to say. I was listening to a speaker the other day who spoke about the two great dreams of Jewish history. People think that Jews don't dream, we're doers, we're action. It's not true. We've had two great dreams. 2,000 years ago, we had the dream of returning to Zion, coming home. It's the dream that all our ancestors, 3 times a day, every time they prayed of returning home. Every time there was a chuppah, every time there was a bris, they prayed of returning home to Zion. There's never been such a yearning in human history. Could you imagine, for 1,900 plus years, yearning for that same thing? Whether you were halfway around the world, my ancestors were in Morocco, 2,000 years later, we all meet up on Fairfax. And nothing has changed. You still dream returning to Zion, so do we. We read the Kiddush Friday night, it's the exact same Kiddush. How could that be? How could we be separated for 2,000 years and not make one change to the Torah? How could that be? So when people talk about how different we are as Jews, I talk about the miracle of how similar we are. How could it be that we never changed our book after 2,000 years? We do more editing in 5 minutes at the Jewish Journal than the Jews have done in 2,000 years. That's a miracle. 1,000 years ago, there was Yehuda Levi wrote the Kuzari, and in there he spoke about another dream that the Jews have always had. The dream of being loved. The dream of having a nation that would love us. And it's like a little girl who has no friends in school. She makes up her own, an imaginary friend. The Jews had this imaginary nation who loved us. So look at what happened at the end of the second millennium. Both dreams come true. We come home to Zion, and we find this amazing country called America, where we're genuinely loved, or genuinely free, and we can say whatever we want to say. After 2,000 years, we know we can buy a building, and we will be protected by the law, and the contract will be valid. We tend to take it for granted. I don't. Some of us might. So we had the dream of emancipation, and the dream of coming home came true. But what happens when a dream comes true? You don't have the dream anymore. So we've run out of dreams. We're 2 for 2. They both come true. And I think one of the crises in the Jewish world today is we need another dream. So I'll share with you my dream. My dream is completely related to freedom of speech. I come from a part of the world where we really had to be careful what we said. Jews in Arab countries could have been jailed for saying the wrong things. Throughout the Middle East today, there are 350 million Arabs who are afraid to say what they want to say. There are poets who are jailed in Jordan. There are gays who are jailed in Egypt. There are dissidents who are jailed in Libya. There are Arabs jailed all over the Middle East because of what they said. There's only one country in the Middle East where you will not be jailed for what you say, and that's Israel. So the freedom of speech, you can find the worst critic in Israel, of Israel, and the one thing they will concede is freedom of speech. That is the one thing they'll say, you know what, Israel, I'm not crazy about Israel, I hate their policies, but I got to give it to you. You have freedom of speech.